Hello, we are going to talk about planning a unit today. We can look at the process here, and you already did the first one in your course plan. Start with the overall goal for the class, and as well as the second one, the course description. We're moving on down here to breaking that course into units and determining the objectives for those units. Basically, a unit is something that has one main focus. For example, it might be nutrition, it might be foods, it might be from foods, it might be broken down into just dairy products, managing finances. Basically, it's something that has one main focus. For this assignment, I want you to choose a unit in your course plan that is about 2 weeks long or about 10 days long. As I mentioned in class before, if you need to, you can take a larger unit. If you had like 6 weeks set aside for food, maybe you want to break that down and have 2 weeks that are spent on nutrition instead of having the whole 6 weeks on foods. So you want to find one that's about 2 weeks long, 10 days. Your requirement for the assignment is to have a minimum of 10 days. When you're planning your unit, like the course, you want to start with the end of them in mind. What do you want your students to know and be able to do at the end of your unit? What skills should they have? What should they know? How can they apply this to their lives? What is it about the unit that will really help them in life? And so that's where you want to start. And basically that is the standards, the objectives that you're working towards. As far as those standards go, you want to make sure you don't try to tackle too much. Maybe 3 to 8 standards per unit, and that's kind of a big range, but it really depends on the unit that you're looking at, and it also depends on the standards. There's some standards that there's several for a unit, and there's some standards that are more broad, and so they don't have, you wouldn't necessarily have as many. But you want to make sure you don't start looking and thinking, well, I could include this, and it talks about this a little bit, and well, this is included a little bit too. You want to make sure that you focus on what it's mostly about. They might not necessarily fully reach that standard, but they should at least be making good progress towards that standard. So somewhere between 3 and 8 is kind of a ballpark figure if you want to have a number to shoot for. So your first task for this unit, as well as deciding what the unit is decide what standards that you might want to use. And then from there you go to writing your objectives, which is describing exactly what the student will know or be able to do. They need to be related to your standards. Obviously, it all kind of needs to align with each other. Your standards relate to your objectives, which relates to your assessments, which relates to your activities that you're going to do. They all need to be all aligned. Usually objectives are more specific than standards, but they're not as specific as an activity might be. You want to make sure that it could be potentially measured in more than one way. You don't want to get it so specific that it's telling exactly what the students are going to do. That's more almost the instructions for an activity to me. You do need to make sure that they're measurable. How are you going to know if a student has actually achieved that objective or not? We have a list of some examples here, and if you look at them, a lot of them can be achieved in several different methods. For example, the first one, students will compare and contrast credit cards. They could be doing that in a group. They can be doing it individually on a worksheet. It could be more of an activity-based thing. There's lots of different things that they could do for most of these. But you'll see that they all have a specific, are specific enough that they can be measurable. For example, the last one, you know that they're going to have a scenario of some type and that they're going to apply budgeting concepts, and so you can see if they've applied those or not. You can tell whether or not they can define a certain term. With writing those objectives, I'm going to pull up another document here. In Blackboard, and I'll show you where this is in a little bit, there are some action words for objectives. You want to make sure that you don't use words like know, understand, comprehend, because you really can't measure those things, and it really doesn't show what the student is doing if they just know something. Can they identify it? Can they create something? Can they predict? Can they match? And actually, a lot of the objectives that you choose help you in deciding what types of activities you're going to have. If you're saying that they're going to demonstrate in some way, let's say demonstrate use of a car seat, then obviously that you need to have them physically working with a car seat so that you can see whether or not they can demonstrate working with a car seat. So for your unit portion, you are going to give the title of the unit, and again, it could just be finances. You can make it simply more creative. That part doesn't really matter, whatever you want to title it. You're also going to describe where the unit fits into the course, and you'll need to look back at your course template, your course plan to do this. Let's say you are doing a food preparation segment. In this area, you probably would say that it fits into this course at this particular point because it is, before we do the course preparation, we made sure that we covered equipment, we covered sanitation, and so that's why I placed it where I did. So you need to come up with some reason of why you placed it where you did in the course. Or maybe you placed it in a certain part of the course because it needs to come before something else. You're going to list your unit standards, and I want you to use the competency level. For example, you would have 3 numbers like 3.4.5. Don't just use standard 3, not just standard 3.4, but I want you to get down to the very specific level within the unit of like 3.4.5. I would like you to write those standards out. Don't just put the number in there, but write it out. And you can copy and paste that from the standards link on Blackboard. But I haven't memorized them. I don't expect you to have memorized them, so we wouldn't know what it meant if you just had 2.3.6. Again, maybe 3 to 8 standards. You're going to write your unit objectives, maybe 15 to 20 for the unit. Look at your standards. There might be a couple objectives for each. If you're having a 10-day unit, you can again look at your topics that you're coming up for each day, and you can come up with a couple of objectives, a couple of the main objectives that you want students to learn for each day. And you're going to come up with a block plan, and there is a template in your unit plan. I'll show you that in a couple minutes. And basically, you're just going to give the topics for each day in the unit. Pretty broad topic, like, okay, the first day we're going to play a finance terminology game. Then the second day we'll do something on budgeting, then on checking accounts. It doesn't, at this point, need to say exactly what you're going to do with those checking accounts. It just needs to kind of give what that topic is going to be for that particular day. For Tuesday, you're going to write a rough draft of your unit information, the standards, the objectives, and get your block plan ready. A couple things that will help you with this. If you look on Blackboard in the unit plans due Tuesday, September 22nd, there's several items here. One is the action words for objectives. Again, this is in the Prepare for Class section of Blackboard. The action words for objectives is the one we just looked at. And there's a couple other helpful items here: enduring understandings and understanding by design. Enduring understandings looks like this. And this is just something, if you want to use it, kind of as a worksheet type thing to help you think through the unit. What you do with this is think about what are the enduring understanding, what is the really big picture, what is like the most important thing that they need to know. If you could only choose, out of these 10 days, if they were only going to come out of it with one thing, what would that be? Expanding a little bit more, okay, what of these topics are important to know and do? So not necessarily essential, but what's important, and then what's just worth being familiar with. That can kind of help you prioritize your curriculum, kind of can help you prioritize what you're putting into your unit. The other one, understanding by design, kind of describes the method that we're using to create our course and our unit, starting with the standards, the objectives, coming up with what the big ideas are. From there, moving on to assessment, and then learning activities. And that's kind of the order we're going to be going through things when we are looking at your unit plan and your lessons. So like I said, those are some things, resources for you to take a look at. In looking at your course template, already done this part, yay. Unit info is where we start. And we've got the title of the unit, whatever you want, where it fits in the course, why it is placed there, what's important to do before this unit, what's important that you do this unit so you can do something else afterwards. The standards, again, write the entire standard out, and it should have 3 numbers in front of it. The objectives, and the spot for the unit block plan. Again, you only need to have 10. You only need to have 10. Some people decide that they want a few more because that works better for their unit, but you only need to have 10. Along with that, if you look at the top here, it says indicate where STEM or core academic concept will be emphasized. One of the requirements is to include some type of a STEM concept or a core academic concept. So you could be including math, you could be including science, maybe you're including something with history. But you will need to have a significant amount of that STEM or core academic concept in at least one of your lessons. And so as you're doing this is a good time to think about what lesson am I really going to include this in. We'll be talking more about core academics in the next couple weeks here, but you need to be thinking about, okay, which area am I going to need to would make sense to include that. For example, if you choose foods and you're doing a day on measuring, that might be a good spot to include math. All right, this video is going to need to be continued, and so take a look at the next one to see some examples of what your unit plan might look like.